Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all today. This is our second to last meeting. Our last meeting is going to be next week. And then what's going to happen is we are going to have our final after that, and then we're done. And what I'm super excited about is that next week we're going to have a guest lecturer, teacher, which is David. He was the student who signed up from Teacher Track. All of you had an opportunity. He was the one who signed up. And it has worked out for me because he's helped with a lot of materials. Usually I have it spread out over the entire book of sharing, and he's helped out with the Kahoot quizzes. So this has been a good experience for David and for me, and hopefully for all of you. So we're going to start our Kahoot quiz just for fun, but extra credit. And I'm going to turn the music on. Please go ahead and put your first name, last name, or first name and last initial, and put whether you are my Monday, Wednesday class or my Tuesday, Thursday. That's really important. So I'll give you a moment. I'm going to unmute the music because we need it. Always love the music. And when I'm in class, I'm always moving to the music. Groovy. Right. All right, Gabriella. All right, yo. Natalie, all right. We should have 6 players at least, which makes it a higher, what is it? I'm using my words here. It would make it more likely to win. I'm watching myself. I'm speaking slowly. I don't know if it's looking weird on your side either. So. All right, we have 4. I'm going to wait for one more moment, and then I'll get started. And if it's 4, 3 out of 4 of you are going to get some extra credit. Although it's in order. Number 1 gets a little more extra credit than number 2, and then number 3 as well.
Mine is taking a while to load.
Okay. All right, we got 5. So are you on there? I don't know who 9, 10, 5, 7, 6, 6 is. So if you win, you're going to have to let me know. Caroline, all right. We went down to 5 players. All right, Clarissa, are we waiting for anybody else? And I'm happy to wait if we need to. Players. Okay, I think we're good. I think David and I are the 7th and 8th. All right, let's start. Let's get ready to rumble. All right, passing re-encounter, courtesy of David D. What does Irene insinuate about Claire at the beginning of chapter 5? All right. What does Irene insinuate about Claire at the beginning of chapter 5? And I'm sorry, the pictures were in the way. That she is selfish and that she doesn't care about other people's feelings. Both A and B. All right.
Oh.
Natalie's on the top. Let's go. True or false? Irene feels the same way towards her husband as he feels towards her.
Oh.
All right, David, can you chat a little bit about why this is false?
So for this particular aspect of the chapter.
Yesterday I was like, I was working right with her.
Hi, everybody. Hold on one second. If you are not David, if you could please put yourself on mute. We're hearing conversations. That would be great.
I was like, fuck it. It is what it is.
Hold on a minute. I'm going to manage participants. I am going to mute. All right. Go ahead, David.
So for this part of the book, Irene's feelings towards her husband are more of discontentment and fear, but her husband's feelings towards her are very resentful. And you can tell that by how he looks at her with a very condescending look and how he talks to her and how he dominates her. So they don't feel the same way towards each other. Sometimes, most of the time, they're very different. They're pretty much, she very much cares for him, but she doesn't know how to please him. And he resents her for keeping him from going to Brazil.
Right. Right. And she's also very stiff. There's not a feeling of a sense of intimacy between them. And I think that he's missing out on that. All right, question number 3. What does Irene's use of the word creature in relation to her black maid say about Irene? All right, so that she believes a servant girl is beneath her because she is darker. So I want you to understand, I actually used to teach a particular unit in my English 100 class about intra-racism. And there's a lot of intra-biases within groups. So it's not specific to the Black community and, picking on the Black community. Every community has this sort of bias against people. And so intra-racism within one's community means that there is a feeling of superiority, that somebody is lighter than somebody else, okay? And so the reason why somebody would feel that way is because in the United States, we have, created racism due to slavery, and it was African-American slaves. That's where that comes from. So if you were lighter, you tended to receive more privilege. But the irony of it all is that those who were lighter skinned tended to be ones whose mothers were raped by their white slave owners. So it was a catch-22 of sorts. But every group has intra-group biases about certain things. And in fact, I used to assign a paper in my English 100 class about intra-biases within any particular group. And I got some wonderful papers about all sorts of communities that weren't even race related. All right. Or ethnicity. Caroline, look at you. All right. True or false, despite being African American herself, Irene is actually racist towards her own people. All right, so again, that connects with the last question. So she does have these racist viewpoints, and it's the same as, some women are sexist against women. So it's the same sort of idea. All right. All right, Caroline's still in the lead. Okay. When we read about Brian and his feelings toward his wife, Irene, and re-encounter, what word best describes them? this goes back to David's discussion earlier about Brian's feelings. All right, we're moving around. Okay, yes or no, does Irene hold herself to the same standards of happiness as her family? All right, David, can you explain the rationale for this?
At this point in the story, Irene wants her family to be happy with what they have. She wants them to be content with their situation in life. But this is not the same standard of happiness that Irene holds for herself. She secretly desires to be like Claire, and she's not happy with what she has, and she doesn't understand why that's not good enough for her family, but why it's good enough for her. So for her, at this point in the story, she expects her family to be happy with what they have, but she doesn't expect herself. And you can see that in the final part of the chapter, I believe it's 2 of Reencounter, at chapter 6 in some books, where she discusses, especially when she talks about all the things that Claire has and how you can get that feeling of jealousy. So it's really important to try and remember that Irene is kind of a hypocrite in this regards.
Thank you very much. All right, next question. True or false? Irene has an obsession with Claire. All right, go ahead, David. Talk about this one too.
So I'm really happy that everybody got this one right. So this is absolutely true. Irene's obsession with Claire is based upon her jealousy of her life. You can see a lot of that in all the little ways that Irene describes Claire and thinks about her, and really does just really obsessively envies everything that she has, and also ridicules it. It's a lot like how when we really admire a celebrity, but we also scrutinize everything they do. It's a sort of obsession with her, where she really wants to be that person that Claire is, but at the same time, she just wants to look and watch and absorb. So yes, she absolutely does have an obsession with Claire. And whether or not this is a physical obsession, or whether this is just it's based upon her jealousy, that is open to interpretation.
Right. Thank you very much. All right. Next question. What does Claire seem to want from Irene as illustrated in chapter 6? Oh. Okay, so Claire seems to want a connection with her African American roots, a friendship, an escape from her life as a white woman. And so what's interesting is that both Claire and Irene seem to be jealous of one another. And I think that that's sort of a typical, the grass is always greener attitude about things. We're always, so-and-so has this, and you're negating everything else that you do have. All right. All right, we're going back and forth. 9, Irene silently agrees with Claire on which of the following? that being a mother is a cruel thing to endure. David, can you talk about that?
So I know this was kind of a tricky question, but that's what I wanted to draw attention to was Irene's silent agreement. Both her and Claire agree that being a mother is something that is incredibly difficult because it detracts from what they really want in life. Claire's daughter is one of the major obstacles of why she cannot leave John and go back to her roots. And at the same time, Irene's child is one of the reasons why she can't leave Brian because she's unhappy. And it's not, the reason why it's not A is because Claire doesn't see her desire to reintegrate into Black culture as selfish. She sees it as reasonable. She sees it as her right. And that type of entitled sense of privilege is one of the things that Irene hates about her in some respects. So, yeah.
All right, thank you much. All right, like I said, I love seeing these move around. Keep it up, everybody. Besides her husband, who else is Claire angry at because she cannot go to the dance? All right. Talk about it, David.
So for this one, this was a little bit more of a theoretical question, so I apologize if it was a little bit weirdly worded, but this is not explicitly stated in the book, but I think Claire is really angry at herself because she knows that the reason why she cannot go to the dance is because she herself has completely disengaged from her African American heritage. And she knows that it wouldn't have happened. She wouldn't be excluded like this if she hadn't have done that to herself. So in addition to her projecting her negativity upon her husband and saying, oh yeah, he won't let me go, he's a really bad guy, she's also angry at herself for allowing herself to do that and get into that situation where she would have to be excluded from her own roots.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. In chapter 7, Irene has a conversation about race with which character? All right, go ahead, David.
So in chapter 7, there's really no conversations between Claire and Irene, or Irene and Brian about race. Her main conversation about race comes with her and Hugh Wentworth, and he is a correct me if I'm wrong, Professor, but he is a well-to-do white citizen who engages in participating in African American events, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. So they talk about later in this chapter, and there's a couple more questions on this Kahoot about that. So I would suggest if you have your books to take a quick glance back over their conversation. And they really go in depth about the dynamic in between white people and African Americans and their interrelatedness and their, for lack of a better word, outer relatedness. So it's Hugh Wentworth, and she and him have a relationship that is also explored later in the story and finale. So it's really important to pay attention to this conversation.
Thank you very much. All right, number 12. What does Irene state to Wentworth about white people's interest in Black people? All right, go ahead and explain, David.
Okay, so this goes back to this one paragraph in their conversation where Wentworth asks Irene whether or not white people believe black people to be beautiful in a certain way. And he asks her if she thinks that other black people are beautiful. And she responds by stating that the emotions that white people feel towards black people is more of like a strange sort of excitement when they're around something that is strange and interesting. And they don't necessarily view black people as beautiful or intelligent, but something that is just out there that they're not used to. And for them, it's a different type of experience. So this is, yeah, that's on page 76 if you have the Penguin Classics version. And it's an interesting concept to see why white people in that time period were so interested in participating in the African American art of the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, it's all about the exotic and and they see exotic as being something really interesting, but they don't understand the underlying racism that accompanies that, sadly. And it wasn't all white people. There are some white people who didn't feel that way, but this was an overwhelming experience for many people during that particular time, and specifically in the cities. All right. Number 13. What thoughts about passing does Irene share with Wentworth? All right. So go ahead and share your rationale for that, David.
When Irene talks to Wentworth about passing, she makes the remark that it is incredibly easy for black people to pass as white. And there's a very good reason behind this. And it bears, we can discuss about it if we do breakout rooms. It's because for black people, what white people have is something that they really desperately want, and it's something that they would desperately strive for. But on the other hand, when white people are trying to pass as black people, especially in that time period, there would be nothing that black people would be able to, there wouldn't be nothing that they would have that would be exclusive to them that white people could not attain. So for them, it wouldn't be a really, they wouldn't try and make it a part of themselves. It would be a lot like acting, like on a stage where it's still kept outside of them. And Irene also mentions that black people have a very specific talent for being able to tell when both white people are trying to pass as black or when black people are trying to pass as white because of their unique perspective and perception of the world around them, which is something that white people, especially at that time period, would not have because they were very blinded to what was going on around them.
Right, because they didn't have to live that particular experience. And that's really important to understand that if you are not the person going through the experience, that unless you have an extreme amount of empathy for others, you don't think about things because you don't have to. So also for Black people, they must be able to live in a quote unquote white society and to do it well, because that is the requirement, right? If they don't, something can be taken away from them, including their lives. So, you know, when a culture is privileged, then everybody has to understand what it means to be part of that. All right, Natalie and Caroline, trading places. Let's see what happens as we're getting towards the end. 14 to 15, true or false? Claire uses Irene as a means to escape from her family and her poor life decisions. All right. I think that that's a lot of what we see in the first two parts, right? That Claire is wanting to get back to her roots. And you may notice as you get older, you know, the older I get, the more I look back on my life and really think about it and miss certain parts of it that I didn't think that I would, right? So Claire, when she decides to pass as white, she does it as a way of being able to survive, which is something that we didn't talk about a lot. Irene is more privileged in terms of financially. I mean, she just has this financial backing, whereas Claire lived with her poor white aunts and didn't have the money to do what she wanted to do and saw passing as an opportunity to get out. And that's different than the human stain, which is something that you can talk about why passing might have been so attractive to Claire and why she may not have realized what she was giving up. All right. Last question. Let's see what's going on here. 15 of 15. What does Claire identify as the fundamental difference between her and Irene? All right, David, can you talk about this one?
So at the end of chapter 4 of Reencounter, we see that a conversation between Claire and Irene where Irene kind of gets upset at Claire because Claire is talking so, how do I put this? Not in a very motherly manner about her own daughter, Marjorie. And what follows is a conversation about what both Irene and Claire are willing to do for their own happiness. And this is the part that really identifies the difference between Claire and Irene, not just by Claire's admission, but from what we've seen in the story so far, when she says, to get the things I want badly enough, I'd do anything, hurt anybody, throw anything away. Really, Irene, I'm not safe. And what this states is that there's nothing forbidden to Claire. There's no point where a line in the sand is drawn where she says, that's too far. Irene has that point. She has a point where she says, no, I won't cross that line, but Claire does not. And that's very, very important to remember, is that that's one of the reasons why there's a divide between Irene and Claire, is that Irene can see how careless and uncaring Claire can be.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see. Here we go. Congratulations, Gabriella. All right, Caroline. Yay, congratulations. My dog's going to continue to go nuts for a moment. I have to keep her in here, though. Oh, yay, everybody. Okay, hold on. I'm still hearing the music. Okay, all right, everybody.
Professor, do we have to take a picture of that?
I took a picture of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I took a picture of it. In fact, here it is. And after the video downloads, congratulations, everybody. Okay, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. It's only going to be 2, and we'll do it just for a few minutes. And I would like you to talk about the film The Human Stain. And you can also talk about passing and why somebody would pass, what the benefits of passing were, what the negative aspects of passing were for the individual and the community. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit next week. David's going to be doing most of the lesson, but there's one thing that I want you to remind me to talk about, and that is one key aspect that is part of every single passing story. It's like a telltale sign that it's a passing story when something in particular happens in it. So please remind me of that, everybody, and then I'll tell you what that is next week. But I want to get you into those breakout rooms. I'll probably give you maybe 6 or 7 minutes in those breakout rooms to talk about passing and also to talk about the film. And you can use your questions for the film to do that. Breakout rooms. All right, and then I'll let you know. All right, here we go. They're opening up.
its stride as good news.
Hey there, everybody. I want to go back to Disneyland, Natalie.
Same.
So,
Yeah, me too.
oh dear. Okay, I'm trying to see. We're still waiting for everybody else. Did everybody leave? Oh, they're coming back. All right. We're missing one person who may have had to pop out. Okay.
I think Carlos left.
Okay. So, Caroline, Mia, and Natalie, can you share a couple of things that you guys discussed?
Hi, everyone. In our group, we talked about how with the Human Stain film, in the beginning, it was a bit like slow and like confusing, but then like as it went on, it was kind of shocking to how interesting and good it was. Like seeing like what was happening throughout to my gosh, his name, Coleman.
Yes. Well, and you didn't know at the beginning, right? Which is why I try not to say too much about the film other than there's there's some dark subplot, but I don't want to tell you because one of the reasons why he was such a good choice for the character is that no one knows him as being African American, right? And that's, you know, when you're passing, nobody knows that you are African American or whatever you're passing as, right? So, yeah, I could totally see that, but I hope that you end up appreciating the beginning details more after the fact. It's kind of like a good piece of literature where at the beginning you don't care about the details and then later on you go back and go, oh, that's why it was so important. All right, anybody else from that first group want to add anything?
And then we kind of discussed how she kind of liked the younger girl, and we don't know why they kind of started comparing. You get what I mean? I don't know because she likes, but then we also discussed it because they were very comfort for each other. I guess they have something in common.
Yes, that they were both running away from their pasts, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, because at first I'm like, oh my gosh, because it may have started out as something dangerous and sexual, but it turned into something where they
Yeah.
connected with one another because of that. Yeah. Anybody else from that group? All right, group 2, Clarissa, David, and Gabriella. What did you guys discuss? A couple of things.
Clarissa, do you want to go?
Yeah. So we talked. Okay, we talked about the movie, but then we also, like you told us to, we wanted to connect it to passing, right?
Yeah.
So David actually said he said that there might be like a connection between with Irene and oh my god, what's her name? Claire, right? He said that they might be like not lovers, but they might be like attracted to each other in that way. And I didn't kind of see it that way. He was all like, well, that's the whole point, that
that would be a queer theoretical point of view. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he said that everybody has their own view on what's going on in the book, and I kind of really agreed with that. So yeah, that's what I thought was interesting about our discussion.
Okay, so that, again, that's specifically a queer theoretical point of view. And you could have that point of view, and people do have that point of view. And then you can also have a different sort of viewpoint. You could have a Marxist point of view, which I was alluding to in the discussion about, you know, Irene passed when it was convenient to her, but she really didn't have to. She was married to a doctor. She came from a more middle class African-American family in New York, whereas Claire did not. And so when, you know, it's one thing just to have morals when you don't have to do a whole lot to back them up. And it's another when you are desperate for money. You're desperate to be able to just survive. So, you know, that would be a more of a Marxist point of view. All right, so that's all for now. But next week, I'm so excited that we are going to have David. Yay! David's going to be with us and leading the class. And at the end, just please remind me, you know, ask me about the one thing that all passing stories have in common, and I'll tell you what that is. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
I just had one question about the lesson plan. So when I'm done with it, where do I ship it to you for review?
You can just send it to me via email.
Okay, so so I'll just put the links to the Google Docs and the slides and
Yes.
everything in
Yeah.
there. Okay,
Absolutely.
awesome sauce. And where do I do the reflection for it once we're done next week?
You'll
Tuesday?
send that to me as well, since there's only, I normally have a place, but since it's just you, you know, just
Okay, and you want that on a separate Google Doc, just like reflection.
you can
right?
you can do it if you want to. The reflection should come after, so you can have it on this in the same place, and then
Okay.
you send me the same link. And the reason for that is that you might want to keep it all in the same place later on in case you want to go back and take a look at what you did, you know, and say,
Okay.
look what I did when I was, you know, in this English 102 class for teacher track, and this, you know, this was my experience. So,
Okay, awesome sauce. Then I shall get to work.
yay. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.